Hello again. So far in our signal project we've been using train detection via a infrared sensor. We're now going to look at another option, which is to use a reed switch, and this is a reed switch. It's basically a very small switch inside a little glass tube, and it's actuated by a magnet passing over it. So I'm going to experiment with these to find out how sensitive they are, and also whether we can use these as a much better option than these. Firstly, they're much more straightforward. It's a switch. It's basically the same as that, but it's that. And I think all we would need to do is put it between the sleepers on a piece of track, and put a magnet on the bottom of our train, and the detection of passing the train is as simple as a magnet passing over this switch. It's no more complicated than that. If that's the case, it may be a much simpler and better option if you are starting out on your layout. So first thing to do, I've got a very simple program to write for the Arduino, where I'm going to see how sensitive this is to a magnet passing and whether the magnet needs to pass in any particular direction. So let's have a look at that. So here's a little test run. There's a reed switch there and an LED at the back, and the basic idea is you pass a magnet and the light comes on. What we need to establish is how efficient this is going to be in terms of something passing at a reasonable speed, whether we can turn it on and off quick enough. Seems to be pretty good though. I think what I'll do is I'll get some flatter and bigger magnets and stick one on the bottom of a carriage, and we'll just do a little test run to see if this is a viable way of operating a switch. If it is, then that is probably a good solution, because all we need to put on the bottom of the train is a magnet, and there's no concern about the detector picking up the rest of the train, because there's only going to be one magnet on the locomotive. Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'll get some more magnets, but I think I need a bigger size, bigger diameter, and not so thick maybe. All right, we'll have a look at that next. So this is the first test. I've put the reed switch in between the sleepers and ran it under the track. I've just chopped out a tiny bit of plastic in the base of the sleeper, so the reed switch goes very nicely under there. The top of the reed switch is about a millimetre below the top of the sleeper, I would say. So let's give this a try. I've stuck this magnet on the bottom of my test loco. It's 1 millimetre thick and 15 millimetres in diameter, and goes right over the top of the reed switch. That's my LED there for my little test to tell me if the magnet's detected or not. So let's give it a go. What I've noticed, get the loco on the track would help, is under low speed, no problem, LED lights up, but as soon as the speed increases, it's not detecting, and I don't know whether that's a limitation of how this thing works, or it's just not close enough to the magnet. So what I'm going to do is I'll try something different and see if that has an impact. I definitely don't want to get a bigger magnet than that, because I'm slightly concerned it might have ramifications for other systems on the track with such quite a large magnetic field. So let's change the position of the reed switch and see how that impacts. Okay, attempt number 2. What I've done now is I've put the reed switch along the length of the rail, which has a huge advantage to me if I want to use reed switches, is because I've already ballasted all my track, and hiding that reed switch on the far side of any rail where I happen to be looking at the track is going to be quite easy. So same again, LED is here comes the train. Yeah, that's good, detects. Oh, this is good. Yeah, look, really fast, and it still detects. That's brilliant. I don't know whether laying across the track is not good, but certainly laying along the line of the track is excellent. So that's really good. All right, what I'm going to try now is, obviously I'm guessing you would get the same result if you laid the reed switch along the middle of the track, should you want to. I think that option there of just laying it along the outside of the rail is good, because it works for me as well. So next question is, I wonder if a smaller magnet will work as well. So I'm going to give that a try. Right, test number 3. This is correction. the magnet I used previously was a 2mm magnet. Now I'm using a 8mm diameter magnet by 1mm thick, which is quite small. Yep, look at that. So there's the LED there. That's brilliant. So that magnet there just stuck in the middle of the locomotive with the reed switch down one side of the track is picking that up, no problem at all. So an 8mm magnet, 1mm thick seems to be really good. Okay, that's excellent. All right, well what we'll do now is we'll just do a little check and test that the signalling works with the magnet and the reed switch. Righty ho. Okay, so I've plugged in a signal and just followed our previous pin chart for when we were using the infrared detectors. So exactly the same. I'm only using one signal in this example. So the infrared detector is now a reed switch. So exactly the same. That goes to pin 2, green light to pin 3, lower amber to pin 4, upper amber to pin 5, red to pin 6, and the override pitch switch to pin 7. So there's nothing changed there. Exactly the same as we did before. I haven't changed the sketch at all, the software. I haven't changed that at all. I've now uploaded that into our Arduino, and now let's power that up. And if it all goes to plan, we should have a little sequence of lights to tell us everything's working. Okay, that's all good. So we're at green as our normal situation. So instead of the infrared detector, I've now got a reed switch. So train comes along, hopefully signal should go to red and go through the sequence. Excellent. Red goes through sequence. Train comes along, goes to red, and if a train comes along through amber or double amber, should default back to red. Brilliant. That's really good. So that's I think that proves that the reed switches are a really good alternative to infrared switches. Firstly, they're easy to sight. Secondly, they don't need a 5-volt supply. It's just a simple switch. And the fact that we can just put one magnet on the train means that it's not going to get false readings from any other part of the train, any wagon, which you might get with the infrared sensor. Okay, that's good. The only thing I suppose we'd better try is just to make sure that the reed switch isn't activated by any magnets inside the motor of the train. Well, I'll try that in a minute. Oh well, there we go. I've taken the magnet off the locomotive, and it's still activating the reed switch, which I guess is the magnet inside the motor. So depending on what locomotive you have and how it's configured, as to whether you actually need a magnet at all. Now that's probably not a problem, because I'm guessing if the motor is in the locomotive and the rest of the train doesn't have any magnets in it, then we should be fine. So fingers crossed that's not a problem, but we might do a bit more testing on that. What I think I'll do as a final option is just to move the reed switch away from the track, just to see if that has an impact at all. Okay, well I've moved the reed switch now, so it's actually by the side of the sleepers and not right up against the rail. And I haven't got a magnet on the locomotive, and it's still activating, which I suppose is good news, because it means I can sight reed switches away from the track and they can be quite well hidden there. The only potential problem would be if it gets false readings from locomotives. Maybe that's exactly what we want, because we want it to do that. And maybe there are some locomotives that won't activate the reed switch because of where their motors are placed, in which case you need to install a magnet. So I think it's a bit of a suck it and see situation there. And in summary, I think the reed switch is probably the way to go here, because the infrared sensor method is fine, but it may be slightly more tricky to set up, and also there's the option of needing to drill holes in the baseboard and wire it up with a 5-volt supply. So at the moment, I'm thinking reed switch is certainly an option to explore. Hope that's of help. Bye bye.